You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Be sure to smash that like button. So we get off air Tuesday at 6, just minutes after we find out that Max Johnson's entered the transfer portal. Minutes after that, we found out that his brother Jake Johnson, 5-star number 1 tight end in the country, has decommitted from LSU. Then we learned that Deion Smith has also entered the transfer portal, and that DeColdis Crawford, the wide receiver, decommits from LSU. It was boom, 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 and it happened quickly. And today, another prospect has also announced that he's entered the transfer portal, and that is defensive end Landon Jackson, who had a knee injury in the spring, played sparingly in his freshman season, but probably not the biggest loss, as he felt like he was more of a developmental project, even as a 4-star coming out of Texas. But Deion Smith, I'm not sure if I mentioned, but Deion Smith also, of course, entered the transfer portal, we learned. Let's look. I shared my feelings as we opened the show today, and if you're interested, you can go back and check those. I don't begrudge any player for leaving. I am very pro student athlete. I was for the cost of attendance. I'm for NIL, for transfer portal, for allowing them to transfer within the conference and not needing a waiver. Like, college athletics, by and large, has been built to make the administrators of college athletics and bowl organizers and all these organizations, adults, to make them a lot of money on the backs of the student athletes. And please spare me that you get an education thing, okay? Because while that's true, it's still a very inequitable deal, which is going on here, okay? So anything that's going to lend benefit to the student athlete, generally speaking, I'm going to be in favor of it. So I like the transfer portal because it gives some of the power back to the student athlete to do something that works in their favor. And I really don't care that a coach making $10 million a year is going to have to recruit a little harder to fill that roster spot. That's why you're making $10 million a year. If you don't like it, go do something else. But I really think LSU's roster is going to be fine. Let's assess a little bit right now where they are. So with Max Johnson, Deion Smith, and Landon Jackson entering the transfer portal, that makes 7 LSU Tigers since the beginning of the season that have entered the portal. Coy Moore, Bug Strong, Miles Brennan, Elias Ricks. Those were the 4 that had previously entered the portal. And now you add to it the 3 that we mentioned, Max Johnson, Deion Smith, Landon Jackson. I know you can count. That's 7. Remember the new rule this year whereby schools can sign up to 7 over the initial 25 as a 1-for-1 transfer. So if you have 7 players transfer out, you can sign 7 over the 25. So theoretically, Brian Kelly could sign 25 high school prospects if he wanted to, and 7 transfers for a total of 32 players because they have 7 that have already transferred. Now, here to tell you, I don't think they're done with the transfers. And there are some big names out there that are still being whispered. And it's not hard to figure out who they are. I mean, Kayshon Boutte was injured. Now you're going to have offensive turnover. Does he really want to catch passes in his money year from a freshman or a new quarterback? They're going to have to work really hard to keep him, as they will anybody on this roster. You know, the onus is on Brian Kelly to recruit the current roster. Now, the question I asked him, was his familiarity with the current roster and in recruiting Louisiana. Here's what Brian Kelly said at his introductory press conference about this current LSU roster.
I would be disingenuous to tell you that I know this roster inside and out. I know the players. I know what the makeup is. I know some of the areas of concern that we have to address. That's why I'm standing here, and we've got some work to do. But we have time. We have time to address those things. We don't have forever, but we have to address those things in short order. And so I know that, when we talk about priorities of decision making, holding on and recruiting, the guys that have made decisions, we got to go re-recruit them. This class is important. And then we'll have time to sit down with current members that have been here that have great knowledge of the players, become more educated, and we'll make that happen over the next couple of weeks.
We have time. We don't have forever. And he mentioned the next couple of weeks, which a week ago meant up into the early signing period. Now, what he mentioned in the beginning of that bite as well is he knows the roster, meaning he knows where the positions of weakness are. And we know those as well, don't we? I mean, we talked about it all year. Offensive line is a spot that you have to supplement. Linebacker, where Bug Strong's already transferred out. You don't know what Mike Jones is going to do, but you're going to lose Damone Clark and you're going to lose Micah Baskerville. So you're very thin at those two spots. Offensive line, linebacker, you got to address immediately. One of those spots is not wide receiver. So listen, Deion Smith against Central Michigan was fantastic. He had a record day. We were all thinking Malik Neighbors might be the guy, but injury to Malik at that time, it opened the door for Deion Smith, who was the number one player in the state of Mississippi. He's a really good prospect. He was the number 9 wide receiver in the country and the number 70 overall prospect. Let's not get it twisted. Deion Smith's a really good player. But he signed in a wide receiver class that was loaded. And as you look toward the end of the year, it was very obvious that Jack Besh and Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas had kind of emerged among that group. And you've still got Chris Hilton there as well. And Kayshon Boutte coming back. Or let's just say you're assuming Kayshon Boutte is coming back at the front of that group. So if I'm Deion Smith, and for the season he has 11 catches for 186, and the bulk of that came in the game against Central Michigan, he never really got the opportunity late. I get it. I get why he leaves. And I could say the same for DeColdis Crawford. DeColdis Crawford is a 3-star from North Louisiana. He's ranked 60th among wide receivers, 6'1", 185 from up in Shreveport at Green Oaks. That's a guy, quite honestly, that when you put your ear to the ground and you ask around about this class, DeColdis Crawford is probably a guy that was at the risk of not remaining a member of this class. If they needed to purge somewhere along the way, he was one of the guys at the bottom that might have gotten cut from the class. And Mickey Joseph was recruiting him, and so now Mickey Joseph is at Nebraska, and immediately DeColdis Crawford gets an offer from Nebraska, and that makes a lot of sense. And that's okay. And that happens in recruiting all the time. Sometimes you gain and lose recruits because of situations like that, which, if I'm being honest with you, is where the early signing period serves a purpose. What if DeColdis Crawford, who's been committed for a while, gets to February and they don't have a spot for him, and that's the only signing period? Well, then that guy is out in the cold. So, well, no pun intended with his name. But that's one of the functions where the early signing period kind of works. So I think LSU is fine at receiver, where you'll have Jack Besh back, you'll have Malik Neighbors, you presume you'll have Brian Thomas and Chris Hilton, then whoever you sign in this class, you should be fine at that position. And then, if you look at Landon Jackson, who entered the transfer portal today, again, that's a guy that likely wasn't going to be a factor. But this is a spot where you're going to need to supplement because you're losing Ali Gay, you're losing Andre Anthony, you're losing Sony Fanu, who gave you some rotational snaps at the end of the season, especially with those guys hurt. Now Landon Jackson's transferred out. If nothing else, what's hurt is your depth. Now, you're returning B.J. Ojolari, who's got a chance to be a stud, and we all know that. And Mason Smith at times this year was playing end. So we'll see who the new coordinator is, if it's Durante Jones or if it's somebody else, and what they do with Mason Smith. But Ojolari Smith is a really good tandem to start. And then you've seen Xavier Carter and Savion Jones and Desmond Little, a lot of guys that played late in the season due to injuries. So you got some numbers there, but that's a spot where you could stand to benefit by going into the portal and getting a veteran defensive lineman at that spot as well. Not critical like offensive line and linebacker, but a spot where you could stand to supplement if there's a guy that makes sense to add a veteran player. The position everybody, of course, is going to ask about is quarterback. And listen, I've gone on record with this one. I think, and this isn't any like super hot take, because I think all of you would agree with this. Max Johnson, Garrett Nussmeier, those two guys were not going to finish their career here together. They just weren't. I mean, it's just the nature of the position. The last quarterback to sign with LSU as a freshman and finish his career was Jordan Jefferson. Jarrett Lee did it. Jordan Jefferson did it. Nobody's done it since. That signed as a freshman and finished their career at LSU at quarterback. It just doesn't happen anymore. The most effective quarterbacks LSU's had have been Mettenberger and Etling and Burrow, all transfers. So I'm not surprised that Max is transferring. And we had heard this internally, his disappointment, his frustration, his family's frustration for some time. So this can't come as a great surprise to people internally. But it just emphasizes what LSU has to do, which is add a transfer quarterback. And I think they were going to do that anyway. Because my contention is one of these guys, Johnson or Nussmeier, was going to leave, but I thought it would happen after spring. I wasn't so certain it would happen right now. But you weren't ever going to go into the season with just one of those guys and Walker Howard. And candidly, I believe Walker would like to sit a year and grow and not have so much pressure on him as a true freshman, be able to sit and watch and get better. So if the answer there is you bring in a transfer quarterback to play for a year, we mentioned Dylan Gabriel from UCF as a possibility. You effectively do what Tennessee did, where they brought in Hendon Hooker from Virginia Tech. We do see this often all over college football. You bring in a veteran player who has starting experience and might help make that transition for you. And then maybe in 2023, you're looking at Walker Howard running the show. Or maybe Garrett Nussmeier has this incredible improvement and becomes the guy. We'll let it all play out, because who would have thought in 2020 that we would have been looking at Finley and Johnson by the end of that season when we were all excited about Miles Brennan finally getting his chance? They're going to add a quarterback in the transfer portal as well. We're just going to wait and see who it is. Dylan Gabriel's a name to keep an eye on, a guy with a ton of experience who can run a pretty fun, wide-open offense. But that number situation at quarterback is going to be added between now and the start of the season. It is going to be very interesting, though, to see what happens with this bowl game, because we are legitimately getting close to the point where you wonder, do they have enough players to play the bowl game? With the amount of injuries, with opt-outs, which are coming. I mean, I'm telling you, fact, there are going to be LSU football players who decide not to play in the bowl game. And you might even look at some of these seniors who are preparing for the Senior Bowl and say, January the 4th? I mean, if it was December 22nd, maybe. But an extra 2 weeks closer to the Senior Bowl, I don't know that I'm in on that. So you may see a lot of veteran guys choose not to play in the bowl game. Injuries, opt-outs, the numbers that they're losing right now due to transfers. And then at the end of the semester, you always have the possibility of guys being academically ineligible if they didn't take care of their business in the classroom. That could hit your numbers even further. What type of numbers legitimately are they going to be talking about for this Texas Bowl? I don't know, but I think it gets very, very dicey. And that's something we absolutely have to watch over the next couple of weeks to see if they have enough numbers to even go play in this bowl game. So that's a little bit of an overview and assessment of where it is today. And I do think Wednesday, with the early signing period, is going to be a relatively quiet day. They have a giant recruiting weekend this weekend with a lot of official visitors coming in, and maybe they pick up some commitments, which would be great to boost those numbers. But if they can sign the 11 they currently have committed, maybe a couple of more on Wednesday, that's a great foundation for this class to really make your push into February. Once your signing class, once your staff is set and firmly in place, and then you can make that push toward the February signing day and then adding transfers all the way throughout the spring as well. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.